Our journey began in Amsterdam, where 200 of the world's best young players were about to go down under. 10,000 miles later, we watched as they battled for honors at the World Youth Championship. In the Cameroon, we experienced a very bad attack of soccer fever. In Toronto, we saw soccer's most famous knight teach tactics with a certain aristocratic flair. While in Singapore, we came across an old and highly unofficial treatment for sports injuries. And in Sydney, Australia, we discovered a lovable bunch of soccer salesmen they call socceroos. In World Cup year, we found that both socceroos and soccer knights played a very important part in promoting the game of the century. The first stop on our tour of soccer's developing nations was Toronto, where England's wizard of dribble, Sir Stanley Matthews, was a star instructor at this soccer clinic. Sir Stanley was the first player ever to be knighted and played First Division soccer for 34 years, still a record. Now 68, he held these Canadian youngsters spellbound with his demonstration of ball control.
If we're winning 3 or 4 none, couldn't care less, you know. But now where can I get away? Where can I explode to get off? I can't, can I? But I can get off like this. Watch. In, out. See my standing up foot? I'm ready to go. I'm ready to get away. Try it now. Gently, don't rush. In, out, in. You understand? You have to feel for it. That's good. That's good. Keep practicing that.
In Toronto, Sir Stanley proved that he was still one of soccer's sprightliest ambassadors. Our next port of call was Cameroon, the former French colony in West Africa. As we arrived, they were suffering a major epidemic of soccer fever, brought on by the fact that their national team had qualified for Spain '82. Now they watch the local team while listening to the national team playing on the radio, probably the nearest you can get to a soccer double feature. So it wasn't surprising that FIFA, the controlling body of world soccer, decided that Yaoundé was ready to hold an international soccer academy.
Tactique en groupe pour attaque ou tactique en groupe pour défense.
With FIFA lecturer Heinz Marotzki in charge, the 10-day seminar attracted coaches and team managers from all over Africa. The object of the course was to familiarize the coaches with the soccer tactics of Europe and South America, because while Africans have a high individual level of soccer skills, their weakness can be teamwork.
Exercice. Tactique.
The idol of the Cameroon and one of the biggest names in African soccer is Thomas Nkono, the national team goalkeeper. Like Stan Matthews, Pele and all the other soccer greats, Nkono started his career aged 4, kicking stones, tin cans and the occasional ball on makeshift pitches like this. But then that's how stars are born. North African countries like Morocco have a much more developed sense of teamwork than their southern neighbors. Graphic proof of this was the match between KAC of Kenitra in the white shorts and Glasgow Celtic, one of Scotland's top teams, held in Casablanca's National Stadium. Although the Moroccans were overjoyed to beat the Scots 2-1 and run away with the local cup, it will be Morocco's next-door neighbor Algeria, who together with the Cameroon will be representing Africa at the World Cup in Spain. From Africa, we jetted east, halfway across the globe to Asia, and stopped off in Singapore, the proudly independent and spectacularly successful island at the tip of Malaysia. Singapore has a booming economy, a fascinating ethnic mix of Chinese, Malays and Indians, modern hotels and luxury apartment blocks, and the most spectacular of all Chinese New Year celebrations. Oriental ritual plays a part in Singapore's soccer too. Swearing allegiance is always how training begins.
When you get onto the flank, I want you to drive that ball.
Jitter Singh, the national team coach, strives to keep up the high standards of Singapore's soccer, which has had its own football association since 1924. Although the team are part-timers, their recent record is impressive, as Singh points out.
In the domestic scene, we've got one tournament called the Malaysia Cup. We have an annual encounter with the Malaysian state teams, which is dubbed the World Cup over this side. And we've been in the finals for the last 7 years. On the international scene, we've done creditably well. We drew with Hong Kong for the pre-World Cup, but unfortunately, we lost to North Korea. We should look forward to being a force in Southeast Asia first, and then perhaps go on to be a force to reckon with in Asia before we can talk about World Cup.
And finalists in the Malaysia Cup for the last 7 years, Singapore hasn't been invited this year. Was it because they're too good? FA Secretary Stephen Tan explains.
We have been in this tournament for many, many years, I think since 1924. And this is one time they have decided Singapore will not be invited. The reason they mentioned was that we were arrogant in one of the semi-final matches. We are pleased to be out of it. At least we can go ahead with our own program.
Okay. Singapore's soccer style may be European, but many of the players are turning, unofficially, to ancient Oriental methods to cure sports injuries. Here, acupuncture is being used to treat a damaged Achilles tendon. A cure from the past that could be incorporated into sports medicine of the future. From the success story of Singapore, we flew to Sydney, Australia, which was to host the finals of the FIFA World Youth Championship for the Coca-Cola Cup, the biggest international soccer tournament ever held in Australasia. As the lights went on in Sydney, across the harbour, a glamorous party was held to welcome soccer's international elite, who had flown in from all parts of the world. Heinz Marotzky, fresh from lecturing in the Cameroon, FIFA's president Yao Havelange in earnest conversation with Northern Ireland's Harry Cavan, and the delegates from oil-rich Qatar. Meanwhile, in Amsterdam, 11 of the 16 finalists gathered to be flown in a single jumbo to Australia. The FIFA World Youth Championship was inaugurated in 1977, when the first Coca-Cola Cup was handed to President Havelange. It was held in Tunisia and won after a penalties playoff with Mexico by the Soviet Union, who celebrated their win with typical Russian gusto. The biannual event was next held in Japan in 1979 and grew in importance. Open to under-20s of all nations, the final in Tokyo was between the Soviet Union and Argentina. It was at this championship that the considerable talents of Argentina's Diego Maradona were first displayed to the world. Now a $1 million superstar, Maradona raised the cup for Argentina. As the jumbo from Amsterdam landed in Sydney, speculation as to who would win the third World Youth Championship was intense. At the quarterfinals, the 8 teams still competing were the hotly tipped Uruguay, training in Melbourne under coach Betancourt, England, West Germany, Egypt, Brazil, Australia, Qatar, and the dark horses of the championship, Romania. Meanwhile, in downtown Melbourne, a mysterious and rather dynamic-looking stranger arrived. As he was whisked to one of the best hotels, rumor had it that he was something big to do with American soccer, with millions of dollars to spend. Whether it was true or not, nobody quite knew. But he turned up to see Uruguay play Romania in the quarterfinals. The Uruguayans launched into the attack from the first whistle. Romania needed support, and got it, from a small group of immigrants in Melbourne. The dazzling footwork of Uruguay's Francescoli merited a long focus shot from the man from America. By the second half, it was obvious that Romania were superior in defense. Uruguay's Betancourt looked concerned when Romania's free kick specialist, Gabor, 5 minutes from the end, scored the winning goal. Romania were through to the semi-finals and celebrated with a barbecue hosted by their dedicated supporters in Melbourne's Albert Park. As we sat in the warm spring sunshine, we wondered how soccer fared in Australia when there was so much competition. Sailing, surfing, rowing for muscle men, or even a quiet round of golf. Australians tend to spend their leisure time playing rather than watching sport. But one thing our journey around the world had taught us was that kids at least are soccer mad. So we asked young Matthew Sanders what he and his friends thought of soccer.
Yeah, well, they don't play it.
As he held up a strange-shaped ball, we persevered. What did he play?
Australian football. In Australian rules, you have to pick the ball up and kick it. And it's sort of like got more action in it because you can run a lot further than you can with soccer. I don't like soccer because if you miss kicking the ball, well, that's it. You can't get the ball back because there's people usually chasing after you.
So if young Matthew's reaction is anywhere near typical, it's no wonder that soccer is way down on the list of spectator sports in Australia. So something had to be done to elevate the game from just being an off-season attraction at Sydney Cricket Ground. To start with, soccer had to be made appealing to children. And it was this pair of lightweight boxers, here seen entertaining some local koalas, that gave rise to a whole new family of soccer players called socceroos. This is a socceroo as dreamed up by Hanna-Barbera, the cartoon company that invented Yogi Bear. They were hired by the Australian Soccer Federation to spearhead a campaign to make soccer more appealing to children, as Simon O'Leary explains.
The idea was to make a character that was obviously Australian, hence the kangaroo, but also to display some Australian tendencies like toughness, handsomeness, virility, but also to be cute as well. Not only an aggressive character, but a friendly character that kids maybe can identify with. After that, I had to develop more characters on that same theme, such as the big muscle-bound guy, Big Red. We've tried to go into different directions with the characters, putting them in different environments. We've done a poster that kids can stick on their walls. This is to show the socceroos in their natural soccer environment, with a lot of other Australian animals involved in the audience and in the opposition team. It's obvious that the socceroos are on top because they're the heroes of the piece. Recently we've done a book which is more or less a young soccer player's instruction training manual, but done light-heartedly rather than in a heavy form which kids might not understand, accompanied by fairly simple text parents can easily read to their kids, or the kids can understand themselves.
So with the Socceroo campaign launched, what of the teenagers and adults who were firmly addicted to the more popular Australian sports? The Soccer Federation's marketing division faced a mighty problem, as Rick Booth explains.
We lose them at age 14 or 15 because there are no personalities, no heroes in the sport, and that's been caused by the fact that we haven't had this sport on television in this country up until last year. The children or the kids of today then move on and they start playing rugby league, or they play Australian rules, or they even just start to go to the beach and begin to surf.
With sun, surf and lots of other attractions to contend with, it was decided that soccer needed a new image, a radical facelift that would appeal specifically to young Australians.
First thing we did was to try and repackage the sport, rather like marketing a soap powder in a way. We have to change the outer packaging, make it more brighter, more colourful, just at the same time as we're also making sure that the product is also good. The soccer must be good once we can get them there. We've done very unusual and unique club badges for them. They've all adopted nicknames. A very controversial move, and of course some of the traditionalists in soccer perceive this as the Americanization of soccer in this country. But that's good for the sport. It's been proven in others, and it works. And the public do respond to a sport marketed as an entertainment form. Well, we finished the Raiders finally, John.
Oh, is that the Newcastle?
The Australian Soccer Federation's marketing ideas are being studied with great interest by a number of European clubs as an answer to falling attendances. They feel that Rick Booth and merchandising chief John Clark have managed to respect the traditional qualities of soccer in their campaign and are selling them in a dynamic and imaginative way. Merchandising especially is going well, as John Clark points out.
The merchandising programs are well underway. There are now 59 products in production, and money from the sales of these will all flow back into the development of junior soccer in Australia. As far as we can see, we have made a fair attempt to get the show on the road.
The question now is whether the children of Australia will respond to the imaginative world created by Hanna-Barbera and become lifelong socceroos themselves.
Take the runners, Jeff, take the runners.
Meanwhile, in Sydney, the World Youth Championship had reached the semi-final stage with coach John Cartwright and the England squad in buoyant mood. They were due to meet the team of Qatar from the Middle East, who until this tournament were unknown in world soccer terms. The mysterious man from America was there too, and watching England with considerable interest. Finally, we could resist it no longer and asked him who he was.
My name is Miguel de Lima, and I am the chief scout for the New York Cosmos. Basically, I am observing the games, at the same time looking for talents. Usually I look for a player who doesn't do the ordinary things, a player who distinguishes himself from the others.
But there was one squad of players that even the million-dollar Cosmos would find hard to impress: Qatar. It was rumored their individual bonuses were running into many thousands, especially after their win over Brazil in the quarter-finals. But then their coach was the Brazilian Evaristo, and over $500,000 had been spent on their training. Qatar were due to meet England, so we asked Miguel de Lima for his impressions.
I think they have an excellent coach, and I think he's a very intelligent man, and he's applying all the tricks that a good coach must possess, and it has been working for him. They apply very well the offside trap that the other teams don't know how to counterattack. The Dutch team in the 1974 World Cup applied that very well, and the other countries start copying. And there is a reason, I must say, why Qatar applied that offside trap. If you notice, the players are very small. They don't have a tall man in the back, so they are forced to come up from the penalty area and play almost in the half field, which means every long pass that is taken by the opposition, most of the time in the forward and offside.
A great goal coming up, but offside.
So, under the circumstances, Evaristo is applying a very intelligent tactic.
During the semi-final, the Qataris applied, or attempted to apply, the offside trap over 20 times. The ease with which England fell into the trap delighted the opposition. But being trapped and trapped again caused nothing but frustration on the England bench. Yet another call for offside, and coach Cartwright was fast reaching boiling point. Qatar's expert use of the offside trap, combined with the occasional brilliant shot like this, were enough to put England out of the final.
Qatar applied the offside trap, and for some reason England never could counterattack these tactics. Although they had several chances to score, I would say that at least 3 goals should have been scored in the first half, when the English team had the opportunity to capitalize. But in soccer, it's like this. If you don't take the opportunities, you end up losing the game.
The sense of frustration felt by England supporters exploded into violence, and 200 of them ran onto the field and caused havoc during Qatar's moment of glory. They were duly dispatched by some burly Australian police. But for one fan, England's loss was just going to be a very bad dream. It wasn't just rain. It was a deluge on the day of the final of the World Youth Championship at Sydney Cricket Ground. But despite the torrential downpour, for anybody who loves soccer, it was a match they wouldn't miss. Qatar versus West Germany, or David against Goliath. The West Germans had everything going for them. Physically, they towered over the Qataris, and the rain couldn't be more helpful if they were to beat the men from the desert. It looked like water polo rather than soccer. Only on a few occasions did the Qataris break through the German defense, but the shots were beautifully saved by goalie Forborn. And for sheer speed, the West Germans outran the Qataris every time. For West Germany, the Coca-Cola Cup looked within reach. The German captain Ralf Loser took the free kick, and yes, it's a goal. The Qataris were noticeably unsuccessful in trapping the Germans offside, even though they tried. And in the 85th minute, Antes scored the final goal of the match. West Germany had achieved a resounding victory 4-0 over Qatar to become the third World Youth Champions. And Qatar went home rich, but not famous. Having won the World Youth Championship, can West Germany pull off the double by winning the World Cup as well, just as Argentina did in 1978 and 9? Who knows? But then that's the magic of soccer, the game of the century.